Alright, it's Easter Sunday, and we're back out here in the shop. Most of you are hanging out with your people, eating ham and various types of salad that you might not necessarily be too crazy about, but are going to eat it anyways because you want to be polite and you don't want to hurt mom, grandma's, auntie, or sister's feelings. I guess I can't blame you there. But me personally, I have no desire to hang out in what I call the den of thieves and roll with a bunch of people who would be more than happy to stab me in the back as soon as I walk out of the room. I've never had much luck, desire, whatever you'd like to call it, with hanging out with family, because they act a lot like the people in this country act. They're out for what's best for them as opposed to what's best for the family. They're more about personal gain and what they can accomplish by setting someone else to take the fall. I'll give them a lot of credit though. They're good at what they do because they usually manage to accomplish their own gains for their own benefit instead of consider what's best for everyone, like we all should do. They would just assume that I didn't show up anyways, because I'd tell every damn one of them exactly what I think about the things that have went on and the bullshit that's been pulled. Forgive and forget? I don't think so, because that would mean that it's okay, and it definitely is not okay. So I'd much rather spend Easter Sunday hanging out with Chief Pontiac because Chief Pontiac ain't full of shit. Chief Pontiac ain't gonna take credit for work that he didn't do. And the only reason I'm gonna get burned by the chief is if I let it happen. There's not gonna be no made up gossip. There's not gonna be any ridiculous stories told by somebody else who only has their own personal gain in mind. Come on, drop in there. Trying to get to the distributor to drop onto the oil pump shaft, but for some reason or another, she ain't quite making it. Alright, we had a little problem with getting the distributor lined up to the oil pump shaft. Usually they drop right in, but I don't know if it had a burr on it or something, but I ended up having to get it all lined up just so that the timing would come out right, and get a little creative to get it down in there. Unfortunately, a lot like the fix that's going on with inside of our political system, I'm not going to know if I was completely successful until I get it all back together. But just like a lot of us experience in our own families, and I could use mine as an example, pretending there's not a problem is definitely not going to solve the problem. And that makes a great comparison for where we're at politically. We all want to pretend like it's not an issue. There are people out there that would just assume that we didn't show up because that makes it easier for them. That way they can make excuses for one another, say things that we can't defend because nobody's willing to get involved, because they just assume, look the other way and pretend that there isn't a problem, or say that it's just too difficult to fix and use that as an excuse to walk away. And that's where this gets kind of tricky. We can afford to do that with our families because for the most part it's only Easter and Thanksgiving and Christmas and stuff like that. They have no direct effect on our way of life. But we can ill afford to do it with our country. Because once we lose the integrity of the country, we lose our way of life. And who can afford to do any of that? To sit around and eat some crappy potato salad or some overcooked ham and say that it's okay just for the sake of being polite. Politically, I ain't eating that. I just assume push my plate away and point out everything that's wrong with it so that the next get together, it just might be fixed. Because I don't know how you feel about it, but it's fairly obvious to me that someone has been screwing around with the recipe of freedom by saying that being politically correct is more important than common sense, and that people's speech should be censored based on that idea. When the reality of it is, that only screws up the recipe. We all have to choke down this bitter plate of freedom they've been trying to feed us. And then when somebody comes along and says, hey, that's not the way it ought to be done, they try to drum him out of the family by saying things that makes the guy look bad, that makes it look as if he's everything, quite literally, that they are. So I suppose I should ask you point blank, you gonna eat that? That fluffy pink garbage that nobody really knows what's in it, but every year everyone says just to be polite how much they enjoy it when it's not enjoyable. It doesn't taste good. And we shouldn't be forced to eat on or chew on anything that we don't like, because that's what freedom is all about. Because we all remember a time when it used to be good. It used to be enjoyable. But somebody else came along and wanted to screw with the recipe and make it so that we couldn't hardly eat that stuff at all. I would just assume I'm not eating it, because it's going to spoil the experience for everybody down the road. And once the occasion draws certain traditions, it's not the occasion we remember at all. And that'd be a damn shame, because this has been one of the most successful plans for a government in the world. And to just walk away from it because we're afraid to say what we think, voice our opinions, or God forbid, use some common sense, would be a crying damn shame.